Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Yiboneh, Yiboneh, Yiboneh HaMikdash, Yitzion, Yitzion, Yitzion Temaneh. Neshama shir chadash.
Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A warm welcome. For those who are unfamiliar, there's a link below where you can follow in the Hebrew source sheets, which we encourage you to do. We want you to learn Hebrew. We also deal with the fundamentals in Judaism, some things that you've heard, but you never really saw the sources for or had an in-depth discussion about. So that's what we're going to deal with tonight. One of the famous statements in Chazal is that Yaacov never died. How is that possible? The Torah itself says that he was embalmed, eulogized, and buried. And we all know we go to Hebron as often as we can, and we daven by the kever, by the Marat HaMachpelah. He's buried there. So what do you mean he's not dead? Okay, so we're going to deal with that. So I just want to mention, I want to thank all those who have donated to this absolute fabulous building. People are impressed, Baruch Hashem, but the most impressive thing is that this place is open all the time. And in the morning we have a group of guys learning, and the energy is fantastic. And anybody walks in here, they feel the Kedusha, and they know this is like a serious place. And for those who really want to come and learn on their own, I'll get you a key. Just contact me and you can come in and learn. Doors open 24 hours, 7 days a week. We are davening, as we have been doing always, for our Chayalim, for the victory of the Jewish people. But, and I say but, it really depends on our unity. Unity is key. And we will overcome if we can just work on our character. Number one, Torah mitzvahs, number 2 and 3, and unity, which is fundamental. Okay, so let's begin. In the Parsha, which we are in Parshas VaYigash, and that is chapter 47 and verse 29. So we're not actually we're not starting in the beginning. 49 verse 29.
47.
Sorry, thank you, 47. 29. I'm on page 49, chapter 49. So let's turn to 47, verse 29. So it's the second verse. The time approached for Yisrael to die, so he called his son Yosef, and he said to him, "Please, if I have found favor in your eyes, please place your hand under my thigh and do kindness and truth with me. Please do not bury me in the land of Egypt." The Hebrew, V'yikravu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. We're going to deal mainly just with those words. Came close, right? Approached. When the time drew near, for the days, it says, the days in Hebrew, the days of Yisrael to die. And we're going to deal with that, right? You're already catching on. Okay. And that's what we're going to deal with. Now, it is important to see the Rashis. These are fundamental Rashis. Anyone who it says, and we're going to see other verses with King David, by Moshe, where it mentions their days drew close to die. Anyone of whom it is stated that his days drew near to die did not attain the lifespan of his forefathers. Example, Isaac lived 180, but Yaakov lived only 147. Also, King David, in connection with Dovid, it's mentioned the expression of drawing near in 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 1. His father Yishai lived 80 years, but David only lived 70 years. Rashi continues, he called his son Yosef. Why did he call Yosef? Yosef was the viceroy. He had the ability to, let's say, the petexia and the know-how of how to get out of Egypt, right? How to bring Yaakov for burial outside of Egypt, which was what Yaakov wanted. He says, now place your hand beneath my thigh. Now, what we think, and I always thought, Yakar actually clarifies this in a different place, that he actually places his hand on the bris milah itself, because they didn't have the Torah. As we all know, in today's society, maybe Christian society, but in society in general, they ask you when you go to swear to raise your right hand or place it on a Bible. In Judaism, believe it or not, the source is Judaism. In the old days, when we used to have people swear, they held a Sefer Torah in their bosom, in their arms, close to their chest, and a swearing ceremony was performed. And this was also done, if you notice, in Genesis 24, verse 2, where Abraham made Eliezer swear that he shouldn't take a wife from the Canaanites, but rather go to his home place. And what he did was the same thing. So he meant that Joseph should swear by the covenant of circumcision. So according to the Yakar, it's the covenant, not the actual circumcision that he held on to. Chesed v'emet. So in the Hebrew, we kind of skipped over it, but he asked, V'asita imadi chesed v'emet. When we think about truth and kindness in terms of burial, that is something, when you are involved in the burial, the eulogy, the taking care of burying somebody, it's a kindness that you usually, I'm kind of in a tongue in jest here, do not expect anybody to say thank you. I mean, we're talking about the person who you have buried or helped bury. You're not expecting him to sit up in his coffin and say, hey, thanks for all you've done for me. This is called a thankless job. And we discussed this other places. By the way, in the description box in the YouTube below, you can find links to previous classes where we discussed this. Now, he did not want to be buried in Egypt, and Rashi brings 3 reasons. We're not going to discuss them tonight, but they were discussed in previous classes. 1, because the soil of Egypt was destined to become lice, as we know, through the different plagues. 1 was the plague of lice, and he didn't want them crawling near or underneath his body. Didn't want to be buried in Egypt for that reason. Number 2, because, drum roll please, I know there's no tables here, but basically when the resurrection will happen, before the resurrection takes place, there are these, I'll call them wormholes, and basically it's either the soul or the loose bone, some part of the body needs to get to Eretz Yisrael. You got to get here, first of all, while you're alive, but if you're not, if you're unfortunate to be buried outside the land of Israel, apparently there is some kind of pain involved of squeezing through those wormholes in order to get here, because according to most opinions, the resurrection will take place here. It could be that it only take place here. Although I will tell you something I read, and I'm not sure if I remember who said it. It could have been the Ben Yehoyada, but there is an opinion that says that there actually be 2 resurrections. The people from Chutz La'aretz will resurrect first. We'll be here to witness it. And then everyone dies, and then we all get resurrected together. There's an opinion like that. And the 3rd reason he didn't want to be buried in Egypt was so that the Egyptians will not deify him. Okay, so that's Rashi on the first verse. The Yakar begins. A statement in the Midrash Tanchuma. Hayamim mesim, v'heim einan mesim. Okay, we're going to have to discuss this. It's a little bit hard to, in this cryptic statement. There is a statement that will be made later that basically there are those who are alive. That's the tzaddikim. Even after they die, tzaddikim are alive, and after they pass on, they're still alive. And Rishoyim, evil people, are dead even when they're alive. Okay, but the Yakar explains like this: Ki kol zman she'tzaddik ba'olam nimtzeu yemei hashalva ba'olam. That as long as there are tzaddikim alive, and at least one tzaddik, there will be some level of peace. I mean, it could get worse, right? You see things, the world has never been totally at peace, but there is some kind of bracha, a roshem, some kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, impression that's made by the tzaddik. We learned earlier, when Yaacov left Beersheba, there was a roshem that was made. So there's a roshem, some kind of impression of tranquility and peace in the world while the tzaddik, the righteous person, is alive. Uvemoto beteli mosam yemei hashalva. I think we're focusing on the days. Interesting. So in his death, or through his death, or when he dies, is negated or taken away those days of peace and shalva. Ubitulam hainu mitatam. And when he dies, so it's negated. There is no longer this peace in the world. And the Yakar says, "Ukamosha Amr, kol zman sheYaakov chai, lo hitchil hashibud." Now, earlier in another class, we discussed why did the shibud begin? Because Yaakov died, similar to like Abraham. Hashem took Abraham out early so that he didn't see Esav go off onto a horrible cultural negative development. And so God took Abraham out 5 years earlier. As you notice, Abraham died at 175, and his son Yitzhak died at 180. So he didn't live the full amount. Although the Yakar explains both sides. It could be, as we just explained, he died. Okay, let's go to it. That as long as he was alive, the shibud didn't begin, the slavery didn't begin. Although there's another opinion that it was the shibud that started, and that's why he died. So it's, in other words, he died and the shibud began, or the other way around. Avo Yaakov Atzmo Chazal tell us. This is the famous statement in Gemara Tainus, page 5b, Shalom Meis, that he did not die. And we have to deal with that. As I brought up the question at the very beginning, there is clearly a statement, not only a statement that he was embalmed and eulogized and buried, but he himself said, "I'm going to die." Okay? So we have to deal with all that. Okay. The Yakar continues. Afal pi shekol tzaddik nikra chai b'mitato. That even though every tzaddik, and there are many tzaddikim in this room, after they die, in their death, they're still called living. Mikol makom. But why is the lesson specifically we learn from Yaakov? That wasn't said about Abraham, wasn't said about Yitzhak. Yet they were tzaddikim, and they came before. Why didn't we learn it earlier? So, Mikol makom nakat Yaakov dafka. Why was it specifically mentioned by Yaakov? Lefi shedrashu olav. There actually is a Gemara we're going to take a look at in Tainus 5b. Makish hu lazaro. There's going to be a connection. There's going to be in the same verse even. In the same verse, there's a connection to Yaakov, to his offspring. Mazaro b'chayim, just as his offspring is alive, and we are testimony to that. Afu b'chayim, so too Yaakov is alive. I think at this point, just to quickly look, I'm sorry I don't have the Gemara, too many copies of it. If anybody wants to use it to follow, I think it's an appropriate time just to take a quick look at the Gemara itself, and we'll see some of the verses. So it says, Amar le, said Rabbi Yitzhak to Rabbi Nachman, to Rav Nachman, Achen Yaakov Avinu lo meis. Is it really true that Yaakov didn't die? Ela shesoivrim shoyu shemes. Yeah, there are those that hold that he did die, but one second, Lechein chanatuhu v'safduhu v'karvuhu. Look, there are clear psukim that he was embalmed, that he was eulogized, and he was buried. Umikroani doire Yaakov lo meis. You know, there's I'm going to say a hint, but there's some aspect of a way to learn that Yaakov did not die. And how do we know? In Jeremiah, look on the source sheet number. Do I have it here? 30 verse 10. It's number 8 on the source sheet. It says, "And you fear not my servant Yaakov, says the Lord. Do not be dismayed, O Israel." Why does it have to say Yaakov and Israel? For behold, I save you from afar, and your seed from the land of their captivity. Imagine, I think everyone sitting in this room was probably in the land of captivity, and we have been saved. And we're looking forward to the rest of our brethren. I mean, how many are there that are outside the land? More than half the Jews live outside the land of Israel today. Okay? And we're looking forward to their how do you say it? Reclamation to their heritage and their land, like we have the return. But this statement, in the same verse, you have the name Yisrael. I mean, look, right? And you have his seed. And the Yakar goes on, the Gemara goes on and says, I'll just read the verse. So that you can find in the words of Yirmiyahu and Navi, Shevtiach Hashem l'Yisrael, that God promised the Jewish people. What did he promise Israel? The Ata al Tira of the Yaacov num Hashem va'al Techat Yisrael ki hineni Moshiach me'rachok ve'et zaracha me'eretz shivyam. Exactly what we just read in English, that Hashem will, he says to Israel, don't be afraid, and I'm going to save your seed. I'm going to take them from a distant land and bring them back from their captivity. From the very fact that within the same verse it mentions both the name Yaakov and his seed, it's a makish. There's some kind of equation that the pasuk itself equates, puts together, connects who, which is Yaakov, Lizaro, to his seed. Mazar b'chayim, just as we are witnessing, and the whole world witnesses, they know that Israel's alive. Right? Just as Israel's alive and Israel will be redeemed as they are. Just as Hashem will gather in the Jewish people from the land of their captivity, he will gather in the dead. I'm sorry, what did I just say? He will gather in the living. He will not gather in the dead. Now, before I translate this, well, today it's a little different. Only the living are in captivity and not the dead. Unfortunately, we are too familiar with recent politics and whatnot. But let's just say, for the most part, that's how history has always been. That it's the living who are the captives, and we are praying that even the dead captives are going to be buried back in Eretz Yisrael. So the statement was, just as his seed is alive, af hu b'chaim, so too Yaakov himself is alive. Now, if you think that's interesting, wait till you see this. I never knew this, and we say this. We say this often, every day. The song of the sea. Shivainu HaKadosh Baruch Hu begoyle kedei legoel et banav le'enav. That Hashem is going to bring Yaakov. Right? Just like Hashem goes into Galut, and when we're praying that his presence comes out of the exile, so too he brings Yaakov to the exile in order to see and witness with his own eyes the redemption of his children. Kashem shematzinu b'yetziat Mitzrayim. I never knew this. Just as we find by the Exodus of Egypt, and we say it every day. Look at Exodus chapter 14:31, number 9 on the source sheet. Right? V'ya Yisrael is heyad gadola asher also Hashem Mitzrayim. Yiru ha'am es Hashem v'yaminu v'Hashem u'b'Moshe avdo. Israel saw the great hand which the Lord used upon the Egyptians. And the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in Moses, his servant. We say it every day, but the Gemara implies, and the Meforshim explain, v'drashu chachamim, we're still in the Gemara, v'hakavana Yisrael Saba. That Jacob, that's who Israel, our great-great-great-grandfather, he is going to witness, like he was witnessing then. He was brought to the Yam Suf. Shehu Yaakov Avinu, Sheru'u HaKadosh Baruch Hu Begu'ulat Banav Mi Mitzrayim. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Now, is this a proof that he never died? Or was he resurrected? We'll see. Okay, I don't know where I should go at this point because there's so many other commentaries. What we should do is probably finish the Yakar and then get back into some of the commentaries on the Gemara. So what we decided, we're going to go back to the Yakar with a little bit of a running start and finish it, and then we'll go back to the sources. So 4 lines down, Chazal tell us in Gemara Tainis that he didn't die. And even though every tzaddik is called alive, even when he's dead, nevertheless we mention specifically Yaakov is the one that we learn this from, and we're taught it. And that's because of this hekesh that we just read in the Gemara, Maki Shu Lazaro. Just as his seed is alive, so too he is alive. That's where we left off. Ki habein yesh bo chelik min aviv. The children are basically a part of or a portion of their parents. V'kol uber yerach imo v'avivu. That every fetus, at least it's like a limb, or it really means loins. The loins of their mother. It's like within. It's part of the body of the mother and the father. That's a part of. Biyot zaro b'chayim, az doime kilu gamhu b'chayim. So while the question is, we talk about the seed, while the son, the children are alive, then it's as if the parent is alive because it's a part of, it's a limb of. Meaning to say, it's a chelik mimenu, it's a part of, it's a limb of. Now, we asked the question, why Dafka Yaakov? So he answers, Dafka Yaakov, Shemitato Shlema, his bed was complete. What does that mean? It means his children that came from the bedroom, right? That all of them, Kulam Zerachai V'Rav Paulim, all of them were not just alive, they were activists. They were men of valor and energy, and they were doers. They were doers. Okay, of a hamoyle ben Russia, but God forbid, someone who gives birth, fathers or mothers a child who's a Russia, kroy b'chayav meis. Now we're actually talking about the parents, not just the child. They're called dead in their lifetime. As ein bora mezake abba. So then the child does not give any merit to the parents. There's a little bit of Aramaic here, but it's combined with Hebrew. Kidayo loba min hadin liyot kenidon. Basically, the parent is going to be judged based on the children's actions. V'atzmo kori meis b'chayav. That the father, the parent, is called dead even while he's alive. Ve'ek Yakar chelik aviv chai. Because if the child's dead and it's a part of, the parent also has a part of death to him too. Therefore, there's another drasha in Gemara Baba Basra on a verse in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 21, and that we have to look for. It's somewhere over here. Number 3 on the source sheet. Hadad heard in Egypt that Dovid slept with his fathers, and Yoav, the commander of the army, had died. So one second. So in the Hebrew, Kishachav Dovid, Shachav, Shchiva, is basically lying down, but it really means that he died. But the word death is not used by David, but by Yoav, death is used. In the same verse, you have a distinct, different description of both of their deaths. They both died. One died in his sleep, in his bed, true, but it doesn't use the term dead. But we know he died. And by Yoav, it specifically says mate. So look at Rashi. Concerning David, I really want to look at the next 4 lines down. Another explanation is that concerning David, who was survived by a meritorious son who took his place. An expression of sleeping is mentioned. Because he gave over such a great tzaddik as a son, as children, so the word shechav is used. Whereas Yoav, who was not survived by a meritorious son who took his place. So I'll just read in Hebrew, V'hadad shema b'mitzrayim, ki shachav David im avotav, v'ki meit Yoav. So we read the Rashi, and the Yakar, the last 2 lines, Lama hiskir b'David shchiva u'b'Yoav mita. Right, that's the clear distinction. Lefisha David hiniach ben Sadiq Hamoto. He left over a son like him. Mashein came by Yoav, which is not the case by Yoav. Umitam ze nemra shchiva b'Yaacov. So too, as we will see some more verses regarding Yaakov, the shchiva was used. V'amis nemra dafka al hayamim. So what died? The days died. The days of the shalva. I want to go to a medrash. I think it's number 2 on the source sheet. So we didn't read it, but let's go through that source. In Hebrew, this is in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 14. Behold, the days are drawing near for you to die. This is Moshe. And the key word is Hain. Hain korvu yamecha lamut. Again, yamecha, your days are drawing near. The days. So the narrative the Gemara, the Medrash gives us is that Moses was saying to the Holy One, Master of the world, the word, meaning the Torah itself, the word that I used to praise you when I said, and he says it in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 14, Hein la Hashem elkecha hashamayim u'shmei hashamayim haaretz v'kol asher bo. Moses says, behold, the heavens and the heavens of the heavens and the earth and all that is in it belong to the Lord your God. By that very word, the same words that I used in the Torah to bring praise to you, you condemned me. In the Torah itself, the Torah condemns me. By that very word, have you condemned me to death? And again, it's Hain. The Holy One, blessed be He, said to him, I'm going to bring you some peace of mind. Behold, Hain, that you are soon to sleep with your ancestors. Yomer Hashem el Moshe, Hincha shochev im avotecha. See the word shochev? And therefore, there's a peace of mind. And there's another statement in Job, chapter 3, verse 17. There in death the weary are at rest. Sham rushoyim chadlu rogez v'sham yenuchu yagiye koach. And then also in Deuteronomy 31:14, behold, the days are drawing near to die. Back to Moshe again. Hein kurvu yamecha lamut. We're on page 2. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, this idea of a drawing near is uttered with reference to the forefathers. A drawing near is uttered with reference to kings. And you see in 1 Kings chapter 2:1, we talk about King David. Then when the days for David to die drew near, Yikruvu Yemei David Lamut, we saw that in reference to prophets. There's Moses, Holy One, blessed be He, addressed in the second person in Deuteronomy 31:14, which we read already. Now, Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmi says, and this is our question, do days die? Do the days die? Because that's what we implied. It's the days that die. These words are simply a reference to the righteous. When they die, their days pass away from the world, back to that idea, but they themselves remain alive. As it says in chapter 12 of Job, verse 10, in whose hand is every living soul? This is a very important verse. Actually, they're all important, but this is not the verse I was looking for. Asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. In whose hand is every living soul? Now, if the living are delivered into God's hand, what the living are, what the dead are not delivered into His hand? It is simply the righteous. That these are the righteous, who even in their death are called living. Back to that idea. And it says in 2 Samuel chapter 23, verse 20, Beniyahu ben Yehoyada, he was a son of a valiant warrior, basically meaning a living person. Ish Chayil, right? Rav Poalim, okay? And what? This is the Medrash. And is not everyone eventually dead? However, the wicked during their lifetime and in their death are called dead. This is back to the statement we said earlier. Now this is a verse from Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 30. And you, O slain wicked, prince of Israel, whose day has come. Now, this is interesting because I don't know if anybody ever noticed it. I didn't notice it. Obviously, people have. In Deuteronomy 17:6, it says, did I skip that? It says, on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses, ready for this? Shall the dead be put to death? Okay? Al pishnayim edim or shlosha edim yumat hamet. The dead shall be put to death. He's a rasha. He's evil, and he should be put to death, but not on witness. Not on one witness. So 1 second. Does someone dead deserve another death? It is simply that the wicked during their lifetime are regarded as dead. Because on seeing the rising sun, what do? We made brachas, we ate, we had a nice meal. Seeing the rising sun, such a one, meaning someone who's dead, is not going to make the bracha, right? We say in Birkat Kriya Shema, the one who forms light. And when it sets, of course, the dead are not going to say the blessing, Ma'ariv Aravim, who brings on evenings. Nor does he say the blessings before and after eating or drinking. However, the righteous do say a blessing for each and everything they eat and drink, see and hear. Moreover, these blessings are uttered not only while they're alive, but even when they're dead. Look at this psukim in Psalms 149, verses 5 through 6. You'll look at these verses differently. Like Israel saw, right, the dead on the sea by the splitting of the sea. It was talking about Yisrael Saba. That this verse is talking about the dead. Let the saints rejoice in glory. Let them sing for joy upon their beds, with paeans to God in their throats and two-edged swords in their hand. Ya'alzu chasidim b'kvod yiranenu al mishkavotam. Right? They're going to sing upon their beds. The same word mishkavotam, talking about on the dead. While they're dead, these righteous people are singing. They're saying brachot. They're giving praise to Hashem, even on their deathbed. Okay, so now I want to go some of the sources, and I don't know where to begin, but I will start. You don't have this sheet, unfortunately. Some do, I think. It's this is from the back of the Metifta. You guys don't have that. Oh yeah, maybe it's on the back of that. Let's see. No, it's not. Sorry, I apologize. So I'll read it to you. If you're familiar with the Metifta, Gemara is unbelievable. So there's a paragraph, Biur Maimar Yaakov Avinu Lomet. There's a clarification of the statement, the famous statement, Yaakov never died. The Maharal, Mafarish, Ulchak Mafarish, She Yaakov Avinu Lomet Benafsho Kishar HaTzadikim. He died in a way that's a little bit different than the rest of the righteous people, the way they died. Beguf hayamet, his body, he did die. V'tam shenachad Yaakov yoter mi'Avram v'Yitzhak, and the reason why Yaakov is specifically mentioned more than Abraham or Isaac, shavadai af heim lo mesu benafsham. Also, they for sure are still alive because they were righteous. But we mention it by Yaakov, mishum shemikrahu doresh lahakish ma zaro b'chaim afhu b'chaim. Because of that verse in Yirmiyahu, there's a connection between Yaakov specifically with his seed. We don't see that by Avram and Yitzhak. And then he says, Lo shaykh lahakish zaro ela et Yaakov Avinu. That it's really worthy and easy to make the connection with Yaakov. You can relate it to Yaakov more than you can relate it to Avram and Yitzhak because of the following. Because all of Yaakov's, the 12 sons, even Reuven, who, right, you have to find out what he did and what he didn't do, but right away after the whole story of him switching the beds, he is included in the 12 tribes, and we know they were all tzaddikim. That's not for now, but he says, Mashem Avram sheyotzi mimenu Yishmael v'Yitzhak yotzi mimenu Esav. Unfortunately, that's the way the world is, that Avram also gave birth to Yishmael, and Yitzhak ended up giving birth to Esav. But when it comes, meaning there were Rishoyim, people who were not righteous, but when it came to Yaakov, all of his seed were righteous. There's a Hachmas Menoach, he explains, Yaakov Avinu lo meis, what does that mean? The whole time he was in Egypt, he wasn't dead. He only was dead when it gets buried. It says then he died. So we'll see that shortly. That comment actually brings another source, the Ramban. Okay, so you don't have that either. I'm sorry. But on that Metifta, in the back, he brings down a Ramban who asked, Hare Yaakov Avinu Amar, Hine Enochi Meis. Right? There's two verses, one in chapter 48, verse 21, and again in chapter 50, verse 4. He says, I'm about to die, so they're going to bury me in Egypt. He says that himself. He says, I'm about to die. So the Ramban, Ketzad Amru Shalom Meit. He himself says he's going to die. So how is it that we say that he didn't die? So he answers, Julai Hu lo yoda benavsho shelo yamut. Perhaps he himself didn't know that he wasn't going to die. And when he said it, wasn't lying, just thought that he was going to die. O shelo rotzo letet lebanav es hakavod shavihem lo meit. So this sounds a little bit like, I don't want to say a false humility, but he didn't want his children to know that he wasn't going to die, so he told them he was going to die, because that would be like, hey, I'm unique, I'm very special, I'm not going to die. It's a little bit like maybe unbelievable. So he said, I'm going to die, but perhaps he didn't die. Ayin Shah. Now, back to the Chachmas Manoach, Yeshev Kushi Azu L'Dvarav. He actually resolves this question, and according to his own words, Hare Yaakov Avinu Amar Hine Enochi Mes, right? I'm going to die, so bury me in my burial place. Hainu B'Kivro Sheberetz Yisrael V'ad Az Lo Met. It's only once that happened that he died. And I think I have that verse. I want to point out in Genesis 49:33. That's number 7 on the source sheet. Yaakov concluded commanding his sons. And it says he drew up his legs into the bed and expired. Now English doesn't always do it. Expired and was brought into his people. It doesn't say he died, right? V'yasof raglav el amita v'yigva v'yeasef el amav. Okay, so he didn't, the Rashi says he drew his legs. He drew in his legs and expired and was brought in, but no mention is made of death in this regard. And this is where our rabbis of blessed memory say our father Yaakov did not die. I just want to see if there's anything here before we actually read that Ramban. The Ramban actually quotes a lot of this stuff that I have here. Just by mentioning, when we mentioned that Yaakov himself said, I'm going to die, that's 48:21. And Israel said to Yosef, behold, I'm going to die. Okay, and God will be with you. So he says, Hine enochi meis. By the way, in Genesis chapter 50, verse 15, when it says that Yosef's brothers saw that their father had died, it's not so simple. Because, look at the Hebrew, V'yiru achei Yosef ki meis avihem. So in the Rashi says, what does it mean they saw? They actually didn't see him die, but it says they recognized Yaakov's death through Yosef's reactions. They just assumed, based on Yosef's reaction, that he was dead. For they were accustomed to dine at Yosef's table, and he was friendly, as the viceroy before he, and then after he revealed himself, so he was friendly toward them out of respect for his father. But as soon as Yaakov died, he was no longer friendly toward them. The pasuk says, they saw him die, but that's not what it means. They perceived that he died only because of the reaction had changed from Yosef's reaction towards them. Let's look at the Ramban. This is on chapter 49, verse 33, where it says V'yigva v'yeasef. Right? We said it doesn't say he died, but he expired and was gathered to his people. There's a glaring omission in the description of Yaakov's passing, which the Ramban discusses. And he's just quoting Rashi, right? Misalo ne'emra bo. It doesn't say that he died anywhere in regard to Yaakov. Our sages therefore say that Yaakov never died, and that is a quote from Rashi. But the Ramban discusses a difficulty with this comment of the sages. Uladas Chazal, according to the sages, Hare Yaakov hiskir misa biatzmo. He himself said, I'm going to die. You see Yaakov mentioned in connection with himself saying, and it's in 48:21, Hine ochi meis, v'haya Elohim imachem, behold, I'm about to die, God will be with you. On the left side, perhaps Yaakov didn't know himself that he was about to die. That's one opinion. Alternatively, shelo ratzah l'teit kavod l'shmo, he didn't want to give glory to himself by calling attention to this extraordinary fact. Similarly, when it says Yosef's brother perceived that their father was dead, it means for them that it was as if he was dead. And alternatively, another explanation is that they did not know about this matter at all. They thought that Yaakov had indeed died. Now, there is a sefer which I would recommend, Rav Tukachinsky, wrote a book called Gesher Achayim, if you really want to learn about what happens in the world to come. Gesher Achayim, the Bridge of Life. The Ramban explains, having elucidated the details of the sage's statement, Ramban explains a deeper meaning. The idea behind this medrash, meaning the Gemara's assertion that Yaakov did not die, is that the souls of the righteous are bound up in the bound of life that we saw in 1 Samuel, which is a very important verse. I mentioned that then. What happens is, by the righteous, the soul is going to hang out, it's going to hover around the deceased person all day long, and it's going to wear a second garb. Lovesh levusha sheni. Remember, the Ramban is quite Kabbalistic, explaining that there's a second garb. The first garb would be considered the human body, which decomposes after death. Regarding the second garb, the Rebbeinu Bechaya, we'll look at that, as a lot of further clarification. At all times, which never leaves it stripped bare. It's not empty, as in the case with Yaakov. So he was alive. He still was alive. Or else, it dons the garb only on certain occasions, maybe the yard site. And this concept can be understood further in Gemara Shabbos 152b and in Gemara Kesubis 103a. So there is a very important thing I do want to share with you. The Alshich, it's in the commentary on the page of the Gemara 5b of Tainus. So the Alshich is like this. Tzadikim afilu b'misason. Actually, let me just go back. He says, Yesh remez. Yesh bo remez, this idea that Yaakov did not die. So we learn in Brachos 18a, Tzadikim afilu b'misason kroim chayim. That righteous people, even in their death, after they physically die, they're still called alive. And this is, I would say, drama. It's like a very important point here. Lefi shamam v'zichram u'ma'aseihem kayamim le'olam. Because their name, right? What do we have? A shem tov. That's all we have in this world. So try to make, right, through our character, the way we behave, the way we deal with other people, their name, their memory, and their actions live on forever. The Rashba explains, and similar to the Maharal, and they go according to their own opinion, even though Rabbi Yochanan holds that Yaakov really did die, ach lo kashar kol adam, but he didn't die like other people. Ela Yaakov netchiyat b'terem techiyas hamesim. He got up early. He got up first. He's not like all the other people, right? He's alive. He and we said by Yetziat Mitzrayim, when the sea split, he was there. God brought him up. He resurrected him then to witness his children being redeemed. I'm not just reading the words here. Okay, and then the last opinion, just to bring it down, it's explanation that Yaakov was resurrected. He got up, he was resurrected in order to see, to witness his children being redeemed. Just like we learned in the Gemara, there's a connection between him and his seed. Uleolam achein Yaakov meis. So the truth is, Yaakov did die, but not in the way that we now understand. He really did live. He still is alive. He was resurrected. However you want to look at it, whether it's his name, we carry his name. We are Yaakov, Bnei Yaakov, we are Bnei Yisrael. We are alive, he is alive through our actions, and we should, Bezrat Hashem, live up to as much as we can, right? Maybe we're a dwarf standing on the shoulders of giants. We're living through historical times, right? But Yaakov is watching us. You know, and interestingly, Yosef himself, you know, was saved from his own Yetzer Hara, looked in the mirror and he saw, I don't know, maybe a window, saw the picture of his father, the image of his father. The truth is his own face. It could be just looking at his own face. So when we look, you know, the face, the partsuf, is a very unique thing to who we are. And unfortunately, many of us experience low self-esteem or all kinds of, mental and emotional challenges. but we have to know we are created in the image of God. We have the partsuf, right, of Yisrael, Mamash, Yisrael, Yisharel, straight to God, right? We're creating the image of God. There's a lot of potential. My Rosh Hashiva said, Rav Noach Weinberg, that if you ever say, I can't, it's akin to Avodah Zarah. So, Bezrat Hashem, we have a fast day coming up, and Bezrat Hashem, it shall be maybe it won't be a fast at all, but if it is, it should be meaningful, and we should work on Mamish Achdus, and that should bring about Bezrat Hashem, the building of the third temple, and the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, and the Geula Shlema, Bezrat Hashem. And I wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom and a great life. And we'll see you. We won't see you next week. I will be in Miami at my grandson's bris. So we had a grandson born a few hours ago. And Bezrat Hashem, we're flying out and coming back safely. So anyway, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Call to.
Yiboneh,